I found theater and the performing arts when I was in high school. What I found, and what I'm sure other people found in theater, is a sense of community unlike any other I had yet to experience. The people I discovered were welcoming, loving, and unapologetically different. Theater continues to provide me with a safe space to explore who I am and to create. Because of this, I thought theater was immune to the implicit biases that plague society. However, when I started researching and came across a gender wage gap within the performing arts, my bubble was shattered. I found that even the most open and welcoming of communities can still be affected by the gender wage gap prevalent in our society. Even though laws have been passed intended to end discrimination based on gender, society continues to keep the barriers in place that cause a disadvantage for women. Hi, I am Stacy Olson, and this is my research presentation, Decoding Bias, the Fight for Equality and the Gender Pay Gap. In a 2010 National Endowment for the Arts study, the NEA reported that women working in the arts made 81 cents for every dollar that a man made in the industry. The gender wage gap problem still exists. To understand the context of a gender wage gap, I started my research on the history of feminist movements in the United States. Three waves of feminist movements have yet to succeed in eliminating the gap in pay and opportunity for women, resulting in a modern workplace influenced by a social construct of gender inequality, sex typing in the workplace, pink-collar job designation, and a glass ceiling. Historians define the obstacles facing women in the workplace as follows. Sex typing is defined by sociologist Ruth Milkman as the skills and capacities presumed to be developed by wives and mothers, such as nurturess, solicitousness to emotional and sexual needs, and skill in providing personal services. Sex typing limits women to traditional roles in society. Building on sex typing, businesses and organizations used the idea that women's work and men's work were fundamentally different as the basis for their discrimination. This led to the creation of pink-collar jobs, where women were paid less simply because they were engaged in work attributed to the traditional roles of women. If a job could be fulfilled by a woman, then the job must not be that hard. As women gained the opportunity to study and work in professional fields typically dominated by men, they encountered a glass ceiling. In this presentation, the glass ceiling is defined as the barrier that prevents women from professional advancement. Contextualizing these obstacles requires looking at the achievements and failures of feminist movements in the United States. The first wave of feminism questioned the institution of marriage and the power of religion in systematically and culturally denying women equal rights in the late 19th century. The lack of rights for women created a clear view of how society was built up on the foundation of a gender rights gap. These women didn't have the right to own property, their children, or have the right to vote. The 19th Amendment secured women the right to vote, but inequity persisted. World War II sparked a societal need for women to enter the workforce in non-traditional roles. We all recognize the image of Rosie the Riveter, a World War II icon portraying women's strength in that time. However, the Rosies didn't have it all that easy. Ruth Milkman describes in her book that the employment of women during World War II was not due to a change in society's perception of women. Rather, it was solely due to the need for workers while men were being drafted for war. In fact, society was so resistant to the idea of women doing men's work that they rewrote the descriptions of the jobs to cater to the skills that women should have, a classic example of sex typing. Here's an example of how employers spun job descriptions. Instead of cutting the lines of a dress, this woman cuts the pattern of aircraft parts. Instead of baking cake, this woman is cooking gears to reduce the tension in the gears after use. They are taking to welding as if the rod were a needle and the metal a length of cloth to be sewn. After a short apprenticeship, this woman can operate a drill press just as easily as a juice extractor in her own kitchen, and a lathe will hold no more tears for her than an electric washing machine. The women who worked these jobs in World War II were doing the same work that men had done previously, yet they were being paid significantly less to do so. Ultimately, the stereotype of a woman's place in society aided employers in discriminating against women and thus created the idiom of sex typing in the workplace. Once the war was over, men returned to their positions at work, and the potential for a larger feminist movement was lost. It wasn't until the late 1960s that feminists started another movement that gained traction. With the passing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, women finally had legal rights to equality. The National Organization for Women, or NOW, brought women together in the fight for equality on the basis of gender discrimination in the workplace. Eventually, NOW turned towards the passing of the Equal Rights Amendment to aid in women's rights in the workplace. NOW wasn't able to get enough states to ratify the ERA. Eventually, their momentum sputtered out. Despite significant wins in court, women still did not have legal protection against job discrimination. At the end of this era, women were exploring new careers, but the pink-collar obstacle still kept salaries low in traditionally women's jobs, and there was an impenetrable glass ceiling that kept women from leadership positions. The theater world is not immune to the biases of society. When researching pink-collar careers, I came across costume design. A careful consideration of the pay gap in the arts reveals how the gender pay gap and the glass ceiling are tightly embedded in a system of power and money, reflecting the experience of women in other work environments and highlighting the need for a concerted effort in calling out these gaps and demanding equal pay and opportunity through vigilant acknowledgments of our implicit biases. Currently, there is a movement within the TV film industry for costume designers to get equal pay to their art director counterparts. The statistics are alarming. A comparison of compensation in the Art Directors Guild and the Costume Designers Guild illustrates a wage disparity. The Art Directors Guild, made up of 73% men, has a base salary of $3,754.47. The Costume Designers Guild, on the other hand, is made up of 80% women and has a base salary of $2,789.73. At first glance, one might think that the two careers are fundamentally different. However, it has been observed that the two roles in producing theater are both equally as vital to the production. After looking at the percentages, it is clear that the reason for a pay gap between art directors and costume designers is the composition of men and women working in those roles. A clear example of pink-collar designation at work. While costume designers are aware of and are working to fight this wage disparity, the deeply ingrained implicit bias of sex typing in society is a barrier that has yet to be broken. The current Costume Designers Guild, CDG, president, Salvador Perez, has been at the forefront of many articles regarding issues in the contracts created by the costume design unions. Perez argues that the pay disparity is a systematic problem rooted in the stereotypes of gender roles. Today, people in costume design and other pink-collar careers join together to fight for equal rights. The question remains of how to successfully acknowledge, fight, and conquer the implicit bias that lives in all of society in order to create an equal playing field for all genders regardless of their skills and qualities. The National Endowment for the Arts provides more statistics on the gender composition of careers in the arts and their correlating wages. Parallel to the differences in costume design and art direction, there are other similarities between careers like choreographers and authors, predominantly women, and architects and directors, predominantly men. Architects, for example, make the highest salary in this study, but only 24.9% are women, whereas dancers and choreographers are almost 80% women, but earn about $36,000 less. The National Endowment for the Arts concludes that when women comprise more than half of the field, the salary is consistently lower than male-dominated fields. Even though laws have been passed to prevent discrimination based on gender, there still exists a pink-collar culture due to society's implicit bias. Effecting change requires more than changes in the law. Only through a vigilant consciousness of society's implicit biases can society work towards equalizing the experiences of women. Confronting and combating these implicit biases is where change will begin. We need to make people more aware of unconscious prejudices, and this applies to everyone. No one is immune. Thank you.